You're listening to the Paul Young Podcast.
Hey everyone, this is Paul Young College Graduation Part 2. If you haven't heard Part 1, you should probably go back and listen to Part 1 because it's kind of pertinent and we're going to pick it up at where I left off. So where I did leave off is that I am going to walk across the stage in front of the Dean of Students and let go of the rope that is attached to my wrist. And I'm wearing these pants of a student friend that go basically up to my waist. The back pockets are weighted down with coins. And the plan is they're just going to drop, and that'll be my memory of my graduation that is special, that I will never forget. Kind of lame, but you know, I'm a student. I'm in my late teens. What do you expect? Well, they call it out. Paul Young, Phi Beta Kappa, summa cum laude, graduating first in his class. And everybody claps because they've woken up from the speaker. And I make my way up there. As I'm passing the Dean of Students, who just announced my name, I let go the rope. And it works perfectly. I mean, you couldn't have choreographed it better. In fact, this whole next scene was choreographed, I think by God. But, you know, maybe God won't take ownership of it. It was pretty awesome. So I dropped my pants. They go just down. And now I'm enough of an actor. I've done high school drama and was on a touring drama group, drama. I did a one-man show and all that kind of stuff. So I know enough about it to look like I'm serious about something. So I'm pretending that this is some kind of an accident. Something has gone wrong. My pants have come down, and only the first few rows are aware of it. I mean, they're basically, the back rows are still waking up from the speaker. And you'll have to listen to part 1 to understand that. So it doesn't take long before the tittering at the front gets all the way to the back, but people are trying to be kind. They think that this is an accident and they just don't want to laugh out loud. And now I am using one, I got this hat, you know, the cap, right? The cap, I've got this cap sort of planted a little bit sideways on my head because I'm trying to hold it down. You know, I don't have it taped to my head or anything. And I've got one hand grabbing my pants and I'm sort of scuffling my way over toward the table where the president's going to flip my tassel and the dean of men is going to hand me my diploma. So I'm fighting my way all the way over it. And finally, people can't help themselves. They start laughing like crazy. And I get over there and I've got one hand, I've got the pants hiked up and my gown is in the way. And finally, I'm like, whatever. So I let go of my cap to pull up my pants, and it flips off my head, does a whole rotation, and lands into the open hands of the president, who is red-faced. And it just lands there. And I went, oh, thanks. And I let go of my pants, and I take the cap with both hands, and my pants go down, and the president's like, oh. And I'm like, oh. And I got my hand on my head again, reaching, but I let go, and the hat flips again, one full rotation, and lands in the president's hands. As I struggle with my pants, I get them up enough I can hold with one hand, and I take the cap, put it kind of a little bit sideways on my head, and look him in the face. And he is not happy. And I thought, uh-oh, this has not gone well. And he, through gritted teeth, he says, "Is this an accident, or did you do this on purpose?" And I said, "I did this on purpose." And the look of shock across his face, and he says, "You go sit down. We're going to take care of you later." As he says that, he doesn't flip my tassel. It's been flipping quite a bit anyway. But the dean of men pulls my diploma away. And I'm like, are you kidding? I'm going to go sit down? There was a little saving grace. Right before graduation, there was a gal in our college group at the church that I was going to, which wasn't a denominational church like this denominational school. In fact, I was taking whole little busloads of these students from this school out to that church, which didn't win me any graces either. But this gal who was perpetually on the edge of suicide, had called me up and said, I'm going to kill myself. This is right before my graduation. And I'm going like, hey, can you wait until I graduate and I'll come over and see you, and just don't kill yourself yet? And she said, okay, I'll wait. So I had a car waiting for me. I wasn't going to stay for the festivities and all that. I had nobody in my family there. So I was just going to go and leave anyway. So this car was waiting for me. So instead of going and sitting down like I was ordered to, I just went out the door, got in the car, and took care of my friend. She didn't kill herself, so that's fine. She never has killed herself, which is a good thing. Now, that night I had, for my gratis duty, you have to do some work so that you get part of your year paid for by the administration if you do this gratis work. And mine was the old phone switchboard where you plugged in, so you had a headset and somebody would call and they'd say, I want to talk to somebody. And so you take the little plugs and you move that plug to this plug. That was another time, right? Old system. Now, I told you in the last session that there was this big rift between the administration and most of the teachers, most of the staff. I didn't know anything about that. Not at all. Totally oblivious. And teachers that were on stage, professors, they start coming by to my gratis work where I'm plugging in phones and saying things like, Paul, I got to tell you, that was the only appropriate response to the speaker. And one of them says, if it had been me, frankly, I'd have taken off all my clothes and run out of there stark naked. And I'm thinking, that's funny. But what I don't understand is that there's a big rift between the administration and the faculty. So I kind of feel bad that the administration went so sideways on what I thought was going to be funny. And so the next morning I decide I better go talk to them. So I go up and I talk to them. And for 2 hours, they grill me. They promise me that I will never get a job in the state of Oregon. What they didn't know is I was already offered one and had accepted, but I didn't tell them that. And they lit into me. And at one point, I didn't know what to say. So I said the only thing that was on my heart in that moment was, I just can't believe that somebody would hold their own identity so closely to an institution that they can't laugh about anything. Well, that didn't help. It was bad. It was bad. I had tears. I was feeling bad anyway about how they were feeling. And so it was just kind of a disaster. And I get back and I return the trousers to my friend, who, by the way, is my friend now again. And he just takes them, puts them away, and never talks to me again for years. Obviously, the message had got out that what I had done was a disaster in relationship to the administration. Now, when I was talking to the administration, they kept trying to get me to admit that this was a political hatchet job on the administration. Now, it wasn't. And I wouldn't admit that this was a political move, that I was creating some kind of a protest against the administration. I thought it would be funny. That's how naive I was about the whole situation. You got to remember, I'm only going there 1 year just to get my diploma. And so it was nuts. Now, to make matters worse, I had to stay there for another 2 weeks. Because, there's all this wrap-up stuff, and so you graduate earlier than the other undergraduates in their classes, and then, there's a few things you have left to do, projects you have to turn in, or whatever. So it was 2 more weeks that I was going to be there. About 4 days later, there was a bomb threat, and someone had supposedly planted a bomb in the chapel where we had graduated, and so the FBI is there, they're running around, they have a list of suspects. I'm on it. And so is one of the professors who had become a friend of mine. He was on it. And it's like, this is ludicrous. So, they're watching me to make sure that I'm not the one making the phone calls. Turned out to be a student who had gone there who was in really dire straits. There was no bomb, but he had called in a bomb threat, extortion, trying to get some money so that he and his family could survive. So they solved that in about, less than a day. But that was a little unnerving. And then suddenly I get a phone call, and it's from Willamette Week. And in Portland, Oregon, Willamette Week was the sort of muckraking, sleuthing type of newspaper in the city. They're the ones that did investigative reporting, and you just never knew what you were going to get with a Willamette Week. But I get a phone call, and it's from one of their reporters. And she says, "I'd like to interview you." I'm like, "For what?" She said, "Well, we need a student's perspective on a article that's coming out in about a week." And I'm like, "Oh, the article?" She said, "Oh, yes, we have been doing a investigative reporting article on the corruption in the administration of that school." And I'm like, "For real?" Now, I had just had this difficult conversation. I'd just gone through this. And so I said on the record, "Well, I don't really know about this, but my only sense is if this school does not reinstate its spiritual foundations, it's kind of going to collapse." Because by that time, I was very aware of all the stuff that was going on. At least I thought I was, not until the article, 8-page article came out, littered with the corruption in the administration of the school. So that's what I said. It turns out that they used it for the last paragraph punchline of the entire 7-8-page article. I'm like, I'm toast, right? And I'm still going to the school. The article comes out a few days later. I'm still at the school. The administration finds out about the article and tries to run around the city and buy every copy of it in the whole city, but they failed. A lot of them got out. Pretty soon it was the topic of conversation. I mean, there were things like, the president didn't even have an earned degree. He had reduced, nobody had tenure. 60-some+% of the budget was under miscellaneous to the IRS. They had a professional tennis player that was only there for the board of directors. They supposedly was a teacher, a coach. They had at one time one of the best wrestling teams in the whole state, if not in a good chunk of the country. And as soon as it became popular, the president had shut it down, and he'd done that repeatedly. My friend, the professor, had been given notice that he was no longer academically skilled enough to stay at the school, and a couple days later got a Fulbright scholarship. So that was nuts. I think he's the one that sent the reporter to me. That's what I think. So all of this is going on. They had violated Title IX. There had been sexual abuse issues that had not been dealt with properly, a lot of hush-hush stuff. So you had your professors that had aligned with the administration, and you had I'm in the middle of this because I decided to do a joke at my graduation. So the president is supposed to address these issues. So we had a chapel where I sat down in a row of students, and two rows in front of me and one behind me all got up and left. Nobody wanted to be associated with me whatsoever. I'm there by myself, and suddenly all the marginalized kids, the kids struggling with some drug stuff, or all the ones that were in trouble, they came, sat with me. And one of the guys sits next to me and he goes, "From the beginning of this year, we all thought you were an ass, but it turns out you're one of us." And that was a real redeeming moment for me, and kind of eye-opening about how institutional politics will step in and change relationships. And then suddenly the people who have a sense of what it means to love will show up. So the president never showed up, and it caused a massive change in that administration and in that school. I became good friends with the next president and very good friends with the president after him, a woman president. And by that time, I had written this little book called The Shack. And one day I get a call, and she says, "We've decided that we would like to give you an honorary doctorate." So I have an honorary doctorate from the school that I dropped my pants at during my own graduation. You just never know. And sometimes God has such a great sense of humor. Where do we think humor originated, right? Why do you think the first sound that Mackenzie hears as he's going back toward the shack is the sound of laughter? Have a wonderful day, and big hugs. Bye. Thank you for listening. If you would like to connect with us with inquiries, comments, suggestions, stories, and more, please go to paulyoungpodcast.com. There you're going to find resources and any notes related to any particular podcast. Today, participate with love, do the next right thing, and trust the ripples.